We've got injuries. We've got buys. We've got the final round before the fantasy playoffs. Oh, what fun it is to ride on the waiver wire tonight on the Fantasy First Down. There are count them, six teams on bye this week. Heck, there's even two 49ers running backs who are on IR. There's a whole lot of needs on the waiver wire this week. So it's time to finish up spending that fab and make sure that your team is set for a final playoff run. I'm Ben Wasley. Welcome to the Fantasy First Down. If you haven't already, it would be great if you could like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also check us out on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down and on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. Let's get straight into the waiver wire for today. And Sam Darnold is my favorite streamer for the week. If you've been paying attention, you know I've been suggesting stashing him from way back when. There's a lot of quarterbacks on bye this week. Guys like Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud aren't playing, so you will need a pickup. And I'm suggesting Sam Darnold. Against the Falcons, I'm expecting plenty of passing. He's been good the last 3 weeks. He's the QB8 on the season, amazingly. So this is a good opportunity to pick him up if he's available, or hopefully you heard the earlier stash videos and you have stashed him. Bo Nix is a good option for the fantasy playoff run. He was disappointing, obviously, this week, but he did have 2 of his passes downed on the 1 yard line. And one of those interceptions was very fluky as well. So I think in general, he's going to have better games than that. And I expect it to start in week 15. So if you don't need someone for the bye week, but you need someone moving more forward, Bo Nix is a good option. He's still available in 30% of leagues. Russell Wilson gets a good matchup against the Browns. We saw that Bo Nix would have had a good game if not for those 2 players down. They certainly scored a lot of points. So I'm expecting that Wilson should be solid. Obviously, he was the QB4 last week in a very good, favorable matchup where he played very well. I'm expecting another solid week. And if you're a little bit more desperate because Wilson isn't available, Will Levis is a solid option getting the best matchup in football against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's been okay of late, but I do think he'll step up this week. Now, running back wise, and this is the guy that you want, Isaac Guerrero. He takes on the Bears. It's an okay matchup for a running back, but the real good thing about him is that he is the starting running back, the clear every down running back with both Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason out. Shame about those 2 starting guys. I love seeing McCaffrey play, but it's just not happening for him this season, as is so often the way with top running backs. He's just the one who got the bad luck this season. Guerrero, however, is the beneficiary. So if he's available in your league, just spend the rest of your fab, basically, if you need a running back, because he is going to be very solid. I expect he's going to be a running back too most weeks. Rico Dowdle has consistently been very good. I've been talking about him since, way back in the preseason. I don't know why he's still available in a quarter of leagues. Look, this was always coming. Realistically, the team is looking better. The defense is looking better. Even with Cooper Rush as quarterback, he is still a very solid option. So he is someone that I want in my lineups for the fantasy playoffs. Alexander Mattison appears to be the starter for the Raiders, but I'm not really confident on that. Coming off an injury, may still be injured. Not a great starting option this week, but I do think he's the best chance of all other players to be an actual true starter moving forward without an injury ahead of him. But there's a massive amount of risk. So just pick him up if you need an upside guy, because I feel like there is a chance he could be solid in the playoffs. We haven't seen enough out of the other guys yet. Abdullah has ultimately been pretty disappointing. Zamir White got some touches, but there's a good chance Madison comes back first. I doubt they lean on Sincere McCormick, but you just never know. Jalen Warren against the Browns, not the greatest running matchup, plus he's sharing with Najee Harris. The greatest concern here, though, is that when Najee Harris went down, which is the first time in about 4 years of playing that Najee Harris has missed a significant amount of time during a game, he has been amazingly injury-free for a running back. We saw when that happened, it wasn't Warren who took over. Cordarrelle Patterson got a whole heap of touches. So that does suggest that Warren may not be a true handcuff. That's why he's lower down my preferences on the waiver list. But he is ultimately still someone you can use on a week-to-week basis because of how he's used in the passing game. So if you need someone who you're actually going to start this bye week and you're desperate, Warren is a good option, but he lacks the upside of many of these other guys. Another desperation starting option, a little bit of a deeper option, is Gus Edwards. Horrible matchup against KC, not getting used properly with Kamani Vidal in there and Hassan Haskins being used on the passing downs. You really have to be desperate to start Edwards, but many of you will be because of the situation. Tank Bigsby, similar situation. Got to be pretty desperate, especially against Tennessee, to start him. Not even the starter for Jacksonville, but at least we've seen him do some good stuff early this season, so he might get used by the Jags. Way more upside with Tyler Algier and Zach Charbonnet. They are among my favorite running back stashes, but they're still at least startable if you're desperate, especially when Algier is winning. So when the Falcons are winning, Algier gets used more. Don't know that they're necessarily going to be winning against the Vikings, though, so not necessarily great this week. But moving forward, certainly a solid option. And finally, Zach Charbonnet against the Cardinals. Again, he gets used when they need a passing back in there. Obviously, was productive this week. Very low upside on a week-to-week basis for the most part, but certainly someone with massive handcuff value needs to be rostered in every league. Same thing with Braylon Allen, by far my favorite stash. Been my favorite stash all season, and we've seen that Breece Hall isn't fully healthy. Good chance that Allen starts to get more touches and may even just take over the starting role once they're out of playoff contention. Maybe they just put Hall on ice. That's going to really help Braylon Allen. Bit of a concern that we're starting to see a little bit of Isaiah Davis as well. We don't really ideally want that, but Allen's still a very upside option. Blake Corum, look, he's a great option because if Kyron Williams goes down, you're going to see a lot of Corum. We've started to see them work Corum in a little bit more as well, but he is just so clearly the handcuff. He's going to get a big load if the opportunity presents itself. Ray Davis, solid option. Problem is you're going to see a lot of Ty Johnson, even if Davis is the starter, but Davis has looked really good when James Cook has been injured. So if Cook goes down, expect Davis to be a very good, solid, kind of like mid RB2 option. That makes him worth stashing. Probably better than your other starting, at least one of your other starting RBs for most people. And finally, Cam Akers. Bit disappointing that we saw quite a bit of Ty Chandler when Aaron Jones wasn't being used. Jones fumbled and missed part of the game as a punishment. We saw a bit of Cam Akers, but more Ty Chandler than we'd want to see. It has been Akers that's been mainly splitting with Jones, though. Even though Jones is still the clear starter, it is possible that Akers starts to take over a bit, or alternatively, Jones gets an injury because he does that, and then Akers comes in. I haven't mentioned him here, but Trey Benson, also a good, solid stash too, for the same reason, but with James Conner. Wide receiver options, and how long have we been talking about Jerry Jeudy for? I swear it's been since the start of the season. I've talked about Jerry Jeudy pretty much every week. Still available in like a third of leagues. He should have been off waivers in every league a long time ago. He is popping off now, especially with Cedric Tillman out. Don't expect him to go off this much every single week, especially against the Steelers, but with Tillman out, he's been very productive. Even with Tillman back in, he's still a very good option when Jameis Winston is the quarterback. Josh Downs going to a bye, which is not ideal, and he's injured, which is not ideal, but I expect him back for week 15 in his full role. He is a good upside option. He usually gets ranked around 20 to 25 most weeks. That's better than you're getting on waivers anywhere else. Jacoby Myers against Tampa, solid matchup. Wide receiver 28 this season, wide receiver 26 this week. I nearly always rank him between 25 and 30. That's just where he belongs. So very solid wide receiver 3 option if you need one. Finally, Juwan Jennings obviously struggled in the snow, but he's been very good this season. Gets the Bears, which is a very tough matchup. Ideally, don't start him this week, but in general, very good play to pick up. I love all 4 of these guys in most leagues. Slightly deeper options. Cedric Tillman, obviously talked about him earlier this season. The injury has meant some people have dropped him. I would be picking him up because I feel like he's got plenty of upside going into the fantasy playoffs. We've seen what's happened with Jerry Jeudy, and Tillman's got just as much upside on a weekly basis. Christian Watson got used a heap with Romeo Dobbs out. I expect Dobbs will probably be back. Maybe not this week, though it could happen. They get Detroit, which is a great matchup. Whether we see Wicks starting to split again with Watson, whether Dobbs is out, so Wicks is starting next to Watson, we don't know. If Dobbs plays, that's going to hurt Watson a bit, but it hurts Wicks a whole lot more. I do hope that we see Watson retain that starting role. Adam Thielen obviously popped off last week, wide receiver 6 on the week, made some spectacular catches. And I still think that catch he made in the end zone was a touchdown personally. Look, he's looked very, very good coming back. Not really a surprise. I suggested picking him up several times in my streamers and stashes article. Always had some upside, and that has occurred. So someone that it's worth picking up. Don't really want to start him against Philly, but certainly a good pickup for the fantasy playoffs. And finally, Marcus Valdes-Scantling. It's such a boom-bust option, but I mean, can certainly do worse. He at least gives you plenty of upside if you need that. And finally, some super deep options. Elijah Moore has been very good. I rank him personally ahead of Valdes-Scantling and maybe even ahead of Thielen and Watson. Getting plenty of good touches. Tillman being out helps him, but in general, he is still getting plenty of looks. They pretty much get equal looks, all three of their wide receivers for Cleveland. Alec Pierce has a bye. We already talked about that with Josh Downs. Still a good solid option, wide receiver 32 on the season. I thought Adonai Mitchell might start to take over a little bit. That's clearly not happening, especially as we saw with Downs out that he didn't even clearly take over. It's still Pierce that's the wide receiver 3. Low upside, low floor, but at least on an individual play basis, make some big plays, and that means that you are going to see some big weeks. Nick Westbrook-Akina, he just can't stop scoring touchdowns, which is insane. At some point, that's going to end, and he does have a very low floor. But gosh, if he's going to keep scoring touchdowns, I'll put him into my lineup. And finally, Parker Washington had a massive week. I think you can easily argue you could take him over all three of those guys above him. It really depends on how they use moving forward. I think he might struggle against Tennessee, though. Will be okay, I think, but certainly lacks the upside of some others because of the matchup. Are we going to see them start to shut up shop this season? Usually when that happens, it is guys like Washington who have big ends to the season. Will it be Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence? I don't know, but clearly with Mac Jones, Washington's going okay, which kind of makes sense. Guy playing for the second team with the second team quarterback having a good game is something we see often. So I do think Washington has plenty of upside moving forward. Tight ends, there's no one great here. I mean, look, most people have picked up their tight end. Tucker Kraft's still a solid option this week. Hunter Henry, I prefer better long-term, but he's got a bye this week, so he drops down a little bit. Pat Freiermuth had a couple of good weeks, tight end 15 on the season, but I mean, the upside is a little bit limited. He's not running enough routes for it to really work. And finally, Noah Gray against the Chargers. We've seen he's turned into nearly the second pass catching option in KC. Very hard to trust, but he's the tight end 18 on the season, bizarrely, because he keeps scoring touchdowns. So, look, he's more of a handcuff stash, if anything else. If Kelsey goes down, all of a sudden, he is a league winner. Finally, kickers and DSTs. Jake Elliott against Carolina. You know the rule. Start your running backs, which is Saquon Barkley this week, amazingly. That's going to be ridiculous. Your running backs, your kickers, and your DSTs against the Panthers, which is why I've got Jake Elliott and the Eagles DST in here as well. Chase McLaughlin against the Raiders, very good matchup. The Raiders, McLaughlin, a top 10 tight end this season. Sorry, top 10 kicker this season, and top 2 kicker in the most recent week. I had him as a streamer last week as well. I could argue towards taking him above Elliott even. And finally, the Saints DST against the Giants with Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock. They're hard to trust in general, especially if it's DeVito. I think the Giants kind of want to lose, so it wouldn't surprise me if we do see DeVito. So for that reason, I like the Saints this week, even though they've had some struggles this season. And that's all we've got for the Waiver Wire show for week 14. Thank you very much for joining us. It'd be great if you could like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Plus, you get to hear all our amazing content coming up soon. We've got the Streamers and Stasher show in a couple of days' time. Then on Saturday, we will have our Start Sit show. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments below, or you can message me on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down or on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. You can also check out my rankings over at ffdfantasyfootball.com. They'll be up quite soon. And finally, my articles are over at football.rasball.com. Again, they'll be up within the next 24 hours. Other than that, though, I look forward to seeing you in a couple of days' time for our next video. Good luck on the final and biggest waivers before the fantasy playoffs.